Last weekend, I decided to participate in my first store regionals since moving to this store regional format at Dark Sphere in London, and the event went pretty well. While I didn't get my invite, I did get 22nd with a deck that, well, as most of you know, I've been grinding with quite frequently throughout the past couple of sets. And that is Xros Heart. And so today I want to go over and talk about my list, talk about my matchups and what I could do to improve in the future. My main goal is just to showcase you that Xros Heart is still a relatively good deck in the format, give you my thought process and just talk about my tournament experience. But before we get into that, please do subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to upload more frequently and your support is greatly appreciated. And if you're looking for any cards that I showcase here today or any card from any card game, please use my affiliate link for Big Orbit cards down below, and if you use my code you'll save 5% off at checkout. So let's talk about the event. So before I discuss my tournament run, I want to go over some other things real quick, mainly some shout outs to certain people. First, I want to give a shout out to Dave for getting 7th place, so close to your invite, and I know you'll be able to get it soon with the Shine Grey that you're playing. And I also want to give a shout out to Bone Duster, who actually took the event with Dragon Links, and I don't think you need me to tell you how absurd that is. Dragon Links in 2025 in Digimon format. Good job, man. But for me, I ended up getting 22nd place using Xros Heart, where I got 3 wins, 1 draw, and 2 losses. So my first opponent was playing something that I wasn't expecting, and I've talked quite a bit of shit about on this channel a little bit, and that is Leviamon. Leviamon is a deck that actually really does impact me quite a bit because it has access to Tamer Deletion. However, luckily for me, game 1, he essentially just bricked and he wasn't able to do anything. I don't even think he was able to digivolve into a level 4. He pretty much just stayed at the rookie level and couldn't really establish a board. Game 2 was definitely different. He was able to, go into the Leviar X, delete a Tamer. However, I think he deleted the wrong Tamer here. If he deleted the Taiki Kudo, which meant that I can't swing for game, I probably would have lost this game, unfortunately, but he decided to go for the BT10 Taiki, and because of that, I was able to go into the BT21 and swing for game, netting me my first win of the tournament. Now, round 2 was against Armor Rush, Armor Rush. This was my draw, and I think this shouldn't have been a draw in the first place, but it is what it is. My opponent went into early Magnamon X's in both games, but in game 1, in game 2, I was able to deal with it. Game 1, less so. I essentially was able to stop him from attacking and then gaining his Wind Digivolving effect because I stopped him from using Security -1 through the Shooting Starmon. However, there was a bit of a miscommunication with how the effects were going off. Essentially what happened was that I went into my EX6 and then swung at Security and then when attacking, deleting the Magnamon. I also had the Raptor Sparrow underneath with the piercing, so I should have been able to do 2 checks into the VMon. However, through confusion, the checks weren't happening, and I think it was just because there was a ruling earlier in the game where I essentially was able to minus DP from a Magna X to a Magna, and then the DP died, and then the swing essentially floated out of existence. So that was very frustrating, and I think those 2 security checks probably would have won me the game. However, in game 2, I was able to essentially do very similar things, but able to control my opponent's field, mainly through Jaeger Darulumon from stopping them from activating the Wind Digivolving effect of a Magnamon X, and I was able to somehow win game 2. I was, I think, struggling to find literally anything Omni related in this game, but I was able to find it. That allowed me to win game 2, and then time was called, and then it was a draw. Round 3 was something, again, I wasn't expecting, but probably a pretty bad matchup for me. It was Tyrant Kabuterimon. Now, I wasn't expecting to play against Tyrant at all, but I do know one card in this deck, and that is allows you to delete Tamers. So when I saw that I was playing against this deck, I was like, not another one, surely. However, in a weird twist of fate, I was able to go 2-0 against Tyrant Kabuterimon, and essentially just being able to dodge Tamer deletion for the most part. Game 1 was just terrible from both of us. Essentially, he hard played level 5s, I essentially was just doing nothing, and as he had the redirect underneath his level 6s, there was no way I was going to swing early on. So essentially what I did was just establish board presence and get some some resources going, and at the end I was able to swing for game. Game 2 on round 3, however, was definitely a better experience. I was able to find key combo cards, and then I was able to rush through his Tyrant Kabuterimon, which is impressive because this is the one thing that I think Xros does incredibly well, and that's just resilience in rushing down your opponents, especially with the new Omni Shout and the new Tamer from BT21. Ideally in a turn you could probably get like 3 to 4 swings potentially. Being able to actually do that this game was incredible for me and showed that this deck actually had a huge ceiling when you do get the cards. Funnily enough, I didn't realize that the Omni Shout from BT21 also had a Digicross for a Shoutmon. So I was able to use the Shoutmon that was deleted previously underneath my Tamers to then swing for game, and for some reason I never clocked the fact that I was able to do that. So that was funny, I guess. I'm so used to like just doing the combo in my head of going BT19 Shout, Digivolve into Omni, swing, all that kind of stuff, that I forgot that you can even just do that. Round 4 was my first major loss here at the tournament, and that was against Dynamon. Dynamon is a deck that I did not expect to see and definitely hurt me in the tournament run. Unfortunately, if you're able to go into the Dynamon, it just has this weird sticking power that you just can't really deal with. And obviously, you know, if you have the EX6 and you minus DP it, then you swing and then you do alliance checks, stuff like that, it has fortitude, so it can do the same thing over and over again, have that protection and keep board presence. And being able to do 2 security checks just on its own is really annoying, so I ended up losing games 1 and 2, and I was just like horribly bricking. I think my opponent was just like, what is going on? And he was just like, is everything good? Like, is everything good? And I was just like, nope, not good here whatsoever. So yeah, very unfortunate, but Dynamon I think is just a hard counter into my deck. Fortunate loss in round 4. However, round 5 continued the hurt, and this was my second loss of the tournament where I was playing against Sakuyamon. And yeah, you can't change my opinion from my advanced deck talk that I mentioned Sakuyamon and how I think the deck doesn't need support right now, and this just justified it even further. This deck just does so much, and just being able to constantly cheat out Taos and going into scrambles to go into Sakuya, which allows you to play another option card to go into a level 7, and then you go into Valderam and you just shut down your opponent. It's just not fun. It's just not fun, but it's very effective at what it does. So my opponent was able to do that both games 1 and 2, locking me out of the game, giving me my second loss of the tournament. Obviously, I know at this point that I was not going to be getting any top cut here, trying to get top 4 or anything like that. I think after the first draw, I just kind of was like, yeah, I don't think I'm making it am I really? So just trying to hope that I can get something extra here. Obviously I didn't, well, other than packs they gave out, but couldn't really fight for higher placements. And so the final matchup was against Digimon, where I won 2-0. Digimon was definitely one of the decks that I was kind of scared about for sure, and I even teched certain cards in my deck to try and counter that, primarily through adding the Valderam back into the deck, just so that I can slow down the analogs so that they can't, you know, continue gaining the memory and continue their turn, but also crucially shutting off the on plays for the Guildmon so they don't get rush. That way they just have harder time really just being able to recycle and weren't able to do a lot. In games 1, I think it was pretty clinical. My opponent did get through all of my security and they did try to go for Galamon, the BT13 one. However, they had a Digimon in play, which meant that they couldn't go into it. I think they were like at 1 memory at this point, so they couldn't actually hard play it at all. So I was able to clutch that up. And then in game 2, I think I just pretty much found everything, and my opponent was struggling to find certain cards and being able to set up ready to go for games. So I was able to win game 2, ending my record at 22nd place out of 60. So now that I've discussed my matchups, let's talk about the deck, which I'll go to now. So this is my deck list that I decided to take to Dark Sphere Store Regionals, and there has been quite a few changes since the last time I've showcased this deck to you, especially since that first draft video that I talked about. You might be looking at some of these cards and being like, why are they in here? Because I didn't really say anything good about certain cards. But I'm going to go over some of the new cards and just talk about the changes in the deck. So let's start off with the eggs, because that is probably one of the bigger changes in the deck. We are no longer playing the BT19 Pikmons at max, and we are playing the BT10 Pikmons as our max, because as we are playing Ukomon now, we still need 5 eggs so we can cycle, but
also, the Pikmons is just a guaranteed draw one. The problem with Pikmons is that it requires setup. So you have to have the Tamer out in play, and then you're able to cycle and then draw one card. It does work, and you can get it to work, obviously, but the reliability of the Pikmons from BT10 is still very important, and it isn't once per turn. It doesn't come up, but if it does come up, it does come up, and it's quite nice. Let's talk about the rookie lineup. We are still playing Shoutmon, but this is more important now that we are playing the new BT21 Omni Shout, but I'll get to that in a sec. We are playing the BT21 Shoutmon, and you might be questioning, I don't really say anything good about this card. There is a lot of things going on with this card that actually makes it really, really good in testing. Bear in mind that my first draft series is just me essentially reading the cards and then getting an idea of how the deck will play in the future. Obviously, I can be wrong, and in this situation, I was obviously wrong because this card is kind of really good in this deck. What this essentially allows you to do is just Digivolve for a reduced cost of 1, and for that reason, we have access to Raptor Sparrow for 1, Shooting Star for 1 if you want to do that, but most importantly, Shoutmon King version for 1. And if you can reduce the cost by 1, and then you're able to get a free Tamer and then get some advantage that way, this card becomes better in itself. But another important thing that we actually do need from this card is the name Shoutmon. Shoutmon is now more important because of stuff like the Omni Shout, but also it has the inheritable effect of gaining Rush. The changes that we've been making with the deck, now we need other ways to potentially swing at the end of a turn with the BT21 Taikudo. Ukomon is the third rookie of choice here, and the reason being is because sometimes I just have trouble finding core pieces within the deck, and this card helps you find everything that you need. We don't really play options in this deck. You can play them, but I don't really play them, and essentially this just allows you to search for any card that you need, then add it, then hatch another egg, which means we get more advantage through our rookies and able to keep up with that rush mentality. In my testing, I've had some real trouble finding certain key cards for combos, stuff like the Omni Shout, the EX6, the Valderam in certain situations. This card just allows you to search anything in the deck, and it helps in that regard. And one of the things about this card is that it costs 1. So if you're going first, you actually have a turn 1 play in going into Digivolving into this, because previously going into a Tamer was very costly, and especially in the current meta, you can't really do that. If you currently go into like a Tamer for the end of turn, which you will do at some point because you don't have obviously all the cards access to you at all times, but there are times where giving your opponent 4 memory is a death sentence, because one of the most popular decks currently in the format is Digimon, and what Digimon does in response is that they go rookie, training, Digimon are designed, and then analog you, they've already set up, and that means that you are going to have a terrible time. So being able to go into what a 1 cost forces them to slow the plays down, and for that reason we do play Ukomon. So let's talk about Shoutmon King version. I've already told you that the Shoutmon from BT21 into this is really good, but being able to play a Tamer for free, like I mentioned, really good currently in the format, but also being able to swing with the Digicross. So what do I mean by the rush thing? So what the big problem is at the moment is that sometimes you just don't have enough to finish games, especially with just using the EX6. Previously, we'd only use the EX6 and it was very powerful in that regard. However, nowadays, we kind of need that extra push to get past the fence, I guess. And so playing stuff like the Shoutmon King version and the Omni Shout have now become new ways to actually go for game, especially with the introduction of BT21 Taikudo, which essentially allows us to attack at the end of the turn. So what this essentially does is allows us to play a free cost rush guy, and then being able to swing, gain advantage, and then hopefully go for game in a quicker manner than we did before. On top of that, we obviously get value with the Tamers, and then we also need the save for the Digicross, and the saves that we get obviously have rush, so we can then swing for more checks at security. And even if it does die, we get to save itself and also save a Shoutmon or anything with save. The deck doesn't have many save targets. It's primarily stuff like the Omni Shout, the Shoutmons, and the King versions, because the new ones primarily say like save this or something from your hand, but it doesn't mention save. So Shoutmon King version is a nice way to go for game or get some advantage early on, especially with the BT21 Shoutmon going into a Digivolve for 1, playing a Tamer, really good. I'm not going to spend much time on the, I guess, I won't say vanillas because they are more than vanillas, but the alternate forms. So we still play free shooting, full Raptor, free Jaeger, free Alter. The only difference here now is the Omni Shoutmon. And Omni Shoutmon has essentially become a new way to play the deck, because the able to Digivolve from this from a Shoutmon has become, well, very good. Essentially, with the combination of Shoutmon, Omni Shout, and Taikudo, we can gain a advantage engine early on, because we can go into this, we go into the Omni Shout, draw a card, and then with the Taiki, we can then swing with the Omni Shout. If it does survive the check, we could then end of attack, play a guy, and we can reduce the cost by 5. And if you did, you delete this Digimon. So with stuff like this, we can go and play stuff like the Raptor Sparrow, so we can get a Surge, or a Shooting Star, so we can get a minus DP or security attack -1. Play a Tamer, stop Rendigiroing effects, or they can unsuspend. Or just have some sort of protection body. Or in certain situations, play Shoutmon DX so you can delete a Digimon, or Shoutmon EX6 so you can get onto your board early. This card has huge versatility in the deck and has essentially just outshunned the previous Omni Shout from BT19. So for that reason, we play 4 Omni Shout because it is just a huge combo enabler in the deck. EX6 is still our main boss monster in the deck, being able to ruin mode on your turn, and then being able to play a body and then swing for alliance and then do 2 checks, still really good in the deck. However, we have changed the Z Greymon target into the Shoutmon DX. Now, if you watched my video for the first draft on this deck, I wasn't too kind on Shoutmon DX, and I'm still not. It does have its place though, and that is because of the meta. Currently in Digimon, one of the most powerful decks is Megidramon, and what Megidramon has access to are Gallantmons, so the Gallantmon promo and the Gallantmon from BT13. What they specifically have to have though is a 13k or higher Digimon to play them out for relatively cheap. It's how they get their advantage engine going essentially. And the previous Z-Grey had an inheritable of 2k DP, essentially making it, you know, not great to have underneath your EX6 because, well, you've given them 14k DP, they can then Gallantmon and they gain huge advantage from that. And safe to say, that isn't good. So that's where Shoutmon DX comes in because it counts itself as a Z-Grey and it has pretty decent effects, although you're not going to really see them that much. Security attack +1 is quite nice, and being able to delete one of your opponent's lowest DP Digimon is nice in certain situations, primarily because we're currently in like a 1-stack meta. We don't really go like wide, it's just usually 1 stack. Get rid of something that's like a level 5 or a level 6 is pretty impactful. So this card, while it isn't good in my opinion, still has a place in the deck because it counters something that is popular in the meta while also being a nice card that you can add in as well. Another card that I decided to add back in the deck is Chaosmon Volderarm, and just to be clear, we still do have access to the partition through EX6 and Shoutmon DX because we have the black and we also have the yellow from Shoutmon DX. This is also kind of like a meta cool card because currently there are quite a few on play decks, again Megidramon being one of them. As Megidramon has to get to the end of attack, they don't really want to attack into this, so they're going to delete this, and then you have access to the partition, being able to, you know, do the answers that way. But also stopping them from unsuspending and then also stopping on play effects, well, that obviously stops the rush Guildmon so they can't continue making their stack and then go for game again. However, in my play, I didn't find this card very good, primarily because I probably didn't really play that many meta decks in the format, quite honestly. So I still think it's a good card, and I still think it has a place in the deck, but at the moment it's kind of it depends on your local scene or the tournament that you decide to go to. Finishing off, we have obviously the Tamers, so we've just changed the Tamer lineup a little bit. We've got 4 BT10, this is non-negotiable. We have 2 of the BT19 Memory Setter one. This is still relatively nice and has good applications for the partition so that you can digicross from Tamers on your opponent's turn with the EX6. And then we also have decided to lower down the Taiki Kudo from 4 to 3. The reason being is because you're not really going to activate like multiple of these on a given turn. You can obviously, and it does happen sometimes, but for the most part you're only going to get like 1 or 2 triggers. Also, the fact that this doesn't have the digicross from Tamers thing also kind of sucks a little bit, but the draw 1 and game on memory is a good cycle for the deck, and being able to attack when the turn ends essentially is relatively nice. So it's also important to note that this is the card that helps you counter Medieval Gallantmon in this deck, which is something that this deck has been lacking for a while. Essentially what this card does is allows you to go into your EX6. It changes the order a little bit, so what you essentially do is that you play the EX6, then you do the Taiki Kudo to then attack, then when attacking, delete the lowest Digimon, that'll be the Medieval Gallantmon, and then you activate the on-play effect. So you do miss the alliance checks with them, and you don't really get anything from your Shooting Starmon. However, you do get rid of one of the most problematic cards for this deck in the Medieval Gallantmon, so you do have this combination to deal with that if it does come up, which is something this deck has been desperately needing for a while.
And that was the deck profile, and after the event I just had a little bit of thinking about the deck, and I think there are definitely things that I would change, but definitely things that I'm happy that I tried out during this event, mainly stuff like the King versions, the Valderarms, etc. I think those cards do have a place in the deck, maybe less so for the Valderarm, just depends on meta checks really, but I think a lot of these cards were getting closer to a final build of Xros Heart EX6. And overall that's my main takeaway from this event. I feel like I'm more confident with Shoutmon at this point, or Xros Heart in general, finally finding a good EX6 build while also being able to rush down your opponent, gain as much value as I can, and knowing some things that I would change now, I feel like I am more prepared for the future. Before I do end this video though, I just want to say thank you to everyone that decided to come up and say hi to me. I really do appreciate it. Huge shout out actually to DU Digimon, which I was able to actually see for the first time in person and not in a Discord call. It was great seeing you, and it was great seeing everyone else that I saw at the event at Dark Sphere. Hopefully we'll be able to get some more events in the UK soon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.